All right, and now I'd like to present our Distinguished Service Award to Colonel Jack Jacobs, who we are very honored to count among our Board of Advisors, and he's seated right over there. As you'll note in the program, Colonel Jacobs has an absolutely incredible biography, and we'll ask him to stand up here and embarrass him the entire time while we talk about him. You probably know him best as one of the only 81 living recipients of the Congressional Medal of Honor, which is our nation's highest decoration for valor in combat. And I'd note that we're blessed to have not one, but actually two Medal of Honor recipients here tonight as Mr. Bud Buke has joined us. Let's hear it for Bud. Please stand up, Bud, so everyone can see you. Colonel Jacobs received the Medal of Honor for saving the lives of 14 soldiers during an ambush in Vietnam. Despite profuse bleeding from head wounds that were impairing his vision, he made repeated trips through heavy automatic weapons fire to get to his comrades, and he had to personally fight through several enemy squads to reach his men. He went on to serve 21 years in the Army before he retired and went on to a second career on Wall Street. He founded two very successful financial services firms that he later sold. He was a partner at Bankers Trust and Lehman Brothers, and then he took a second retirement. He then went on to a third career in journalism and teaching. And he's an Emmy Award-nominated analyst at NBC News. He's a professor at West Point and is the author of two books, one of which received the Colby Award, which is pretty incredible. I mean, most of us, sir, are struggling to have one successful career, let alone three. And the fact that Jax pours so much of his time, effort, passion, and dedication into serving children of fallen patriots and the families that we're honored to work for just shows you where Jack's priorities and values are. He's been tireless in his efforts of supporting children of fallen patriots, and over the past 3 years, he and his lovely wife, Sue, who's seated right over there, has they've hosted 4 different events that have raised over $4.5 million for children of fallen patriots. So, sir, without your contributions, we would literally not be where we are here today, and we can't thank you enough, and we thank you from the bottom of our hearts.
My pleasure. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
It's bigger than I am.
Okay. Great. All right, sir.
Thanks, boss.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much. The $4.5 million comes from the efforts of the Kims and all the people here. All the good work that's been done wouldn't be done without you and without all of you. And so I want to thank you for the contributions that you've made to these families, but more significantly, the indirect contributions you've made through these families to the United States of America. It's the most important thing that we do. Education is the most important thing that we do, and we shouldn't forget it. I thank you very much for having me here. I'm delighted to be here, and at my age, I'm delighted to be any place at all. I was talking to David and Cynthia's kids, two of them here tonight, and one of them asked me how old I was, and I said, I'm approaching 40. And the oldest said, from which direction are you approaching 40? Getting old is no fun, as you know. I don't know if it was, it could have been some comedian, I can't remember who it was, who said very succinctly that I have two of my 3 children are here tonight. But they're not young either. So, except my daughter, who's only 12 or 13 years old. but it's really kind of interesting that when you think about it, you ask your children, you ask little kids, what are they going to be when they grow up? And they tell you, and the only reason people my age do that is because we're trying to get some ideas. Trying to figure out some way. I've had all these careers. None of them was a success, clearly, because I don't have the same one. All of the institutions I was part of, every single one of them, except the 82nd Airborne Division, Bankers Trust, Lehman Brothers, the 7th Infantry Division, 4th Battalion, 10th Infantry, and so they're all defunct. I had nothing to do with any of those things at all, and published reports notwithstanding. My objective, I must say so right here, my objective here, not just here, but my objective in life now, is to grow old enough to become a burden to my children. You know, I think back on my life. I've always wanted to be somebody, but I wished I had been a little bit more specific when I made my prayers. We live in New Jersey, and large portions, I mean, you suffered very heavily out here, and New York did, Queens, Staten Island, Brooklyn, and so on. We still have no electricity at my house. So it's 2 weeks today, and there's no end in sight. I mean, it's kind of interesting living in a very primitive country as we do. I mean, it's just like some third world, fourth world country, except without the cholera. And I mean, that's going to come soon, too, if we don't just some electricity. You can eat what you're having, but don't come to my house and eat anything. And it's really kind of interesting when you're crammed up together, living in, just my wife and I, living in even a big house. You start to climb all over one another and get in each other's faces, and it's really very, very difficult being jammed into one place, never leaving with anybody. And quite frankly, I think that this is, I'm thinking about Osama bin Laden right now. There's a guy who's for 5 years in one house with 3 wives. I have it on very good authority. He called SEAL Team 6 himself. Well, it's really funny in retrospect, but think of what I'm going through at the moment. We just had an election, and things are very much different now than they were when I was young. I remember watching the Republican convention in 1952, and politics was very much different back in those days. Think of all the things that got done back then. If you think even farther back, we had the Army colonial troop here. If you think back in colonial times, we had Jefferson and Washington and Payne and Franklin and so on. Now we have Al Franken and Todd Aiken. I'm not convinced that we've made a great deal of progress necessarily. All right, I'll be more specific. We haven't made any progress at all. I think it was Aesop who said that we hang petty criminals and the major criminals we elect to public office. Which, I mean, obviously things haven't changed in a very, very long time. And I think it was, maybe it was Jerry Seinfeld probably, almost undoubtedly, who said everything smart, who said that 99% of the American public, 99% of Americans are hardworking, dedicated, decent people, and the other 1% are politicians. And I know some of you some of you are politicians. So. Well, except for the 2 guys who are here now. We love all of you. Thank you very much for what you're doing. and those of you who might be thinking of running for office. It's really kind of interesting. We've actually made it very difficult for people to run for office without making it extremely difficult for them. We need to change that. I'm not convinced that the process is the best. I was talking to the kids. I'm going to day school here in another week or so to speak, and I was thinking about the kids. I was thinking about when I went to school. I went to public school in New York City at a time when you got a very, very good education. I remember coming back from third grade, complaining to this is absolutely true, complaining to my mother that Mrs. Romano hit me with the ruler. And then my mother hit me. Now, I'm not a fan of corporal punishment anymore. You know, my kids are big enough to beat me up, and their kids are big enough to beat me up. Anybody's kids are big enough to beat me up. But it tells you a little bit about the focus and attention we've had on education in the past. We may not have it today, and we need to work harder on it, and that's why I say that education is the single most important thing that we do. In my school, I went to PS 83 in Queens. In my school, the school paper had an obituary column. Well, it wasn't that funny then, but. And they took kids' pictures, you know, for the yearbook. It was a front shot and a side shot, is what. Everybody had a number. All right, enough of that nonsense. We're not going to talk about that. We'll save some of that stuff for later. First of all, I want to remind everybody that we're off the record here. And that goes for all the stuff I just said, which I won't repeat, although we're being filmed. We're off the record over this stuff. So we want to make this a comfortable exercise in which we can say anything we want, because we're among friends, which we are. There's a number of sponsors I want to thank, and thankfully, you're repetitive sponsors, and there's a large number of you. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the names and hold your applause, please, even if they're friends of yours or they're you. And we'll wait to the end, and I'm going to have you all rise, and we're all going to thank you, because we're blessed that there are so many of you who've stood up. Cliff and Laurel Asness, who are on the board. Bob and Patty Calderoni. Cengage Learning, represented by Cindy Cook. Stephen and Alexandra Cohen, represented by Mike Sullivan. Foot Locker, represented by Ken Hicks. Stephen and Linda Fox. Glenn Gate, who donated the decorations tonight, was represented by Jordy Scott. The Genzibar Foundation, represented by John Beam. Alex and Rachel McCary. Paul and Jane Murphy on the board. All these are on the board. Paul and Jane Murphy, Dick and Mary Pace. Lauren and Stacy Radke, Darren and Holly Rebellis, Peter and Ann Richardson, Bill and Sue Sullivan, Rob and Ellen Sweeney, also on the board, and the Veterans on Wall Street, represented by Frank Fehrenbach. And I'd like all of you, and anybody who knows any of these people, to stand up. Please stand up so we can give you the record. Come on, up, 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 up. Thank you for supporting this effort and therefore supporting the United States of America. And we also want to thank all those generous people who sponsored a table, and you know who you are, and people at your table know who you are. And I just want to remind everybody that as we sit and relax and have a good time and are praying for electricity, as some of us are, we have a lot of troops who are still in combat, who are still engaging the enemy of the Republic, and who in the future will do so too, who are in uniform. We're very, very lucky to have them. We have wounded warriors with us. We have veterans from many different conflicts. We have veterans from all branches of service. And at the risk of having everybody or nearly everybody stand up. Will all the veterans please stand up so we can recognize you? Up.